We're here at my buddy Rob's house. He's got some big tanks behind us. We're focusing mainly on loaches today. I know that loaches weren't your first love. It was actually what, livebearers and guppies?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, and how'd that start as a kid?
Yeah, when I was around 10, 12 years old, that's what I was doing. It seemed like the easy stuff to get and easy things to breed. So that's how I got my, I guess, my chops, when it comes to fish. The easy stuff, swordtails, mollies, platies, guppies. The only thing that wasn't was cories. I always seem to always have cories for bottom fish. And that's all I did. I had, probably about 10 small tanks, and that's what I got into in the beginning.
So when did you first keep your first loach, or how did you get into loaches?
Yeah, it's a wild story. I had twin 55 gallons that were completely empty. I had just picked them up, and I just needed fish to fill them up. And a guy and his wife or girlfriend had about, 30, 40 fish, and they had to consolidate their tanks because they were all living under one roof. So I answered the call, and I went over there, and they had a bunch of fish I'd never seen before, keeping livebearers. I had to literally look up every fish I had. I had no clue what these fish did, what their care was, anything. And in that batch was two clown loaches. And I've seen them in pictures, but I never had any or anything like that. So I didn't think much of them. I was kind of overwhelmed by all the fish. Then I saw a Craigslist ad, and a guy was looking specifically for loaches and was willing to pay top dollar for them. I'm like, well, I just picked these up. Why does he want only loaches, right? So I'm talking to the guy and everything, and he's telling me how much he loves them and why he loves them. And he kind of convinced me not to sell him the loaches that I was probably going to sell him anyway at the time, because I didn't know enough about them. And now all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, you're not getting them. So I kept them, and sure enough, they turned out to be awesome fish. And that's what it started out with. The two clown loaches are in the tank right now.
In the big tank, I know you have a lot more loaches. Like, how many different species of loaches are you up to now in this 125 behind us?
I'm a little embarrassed to say. I'm not quite sure. I think I'm up to 7 right now.
Okay. So besides the clown loach, what was like the next loach that you picked up after the clown loach?
Wow, great question. I think the first ones I picked up were the Sumo loaches. So I picked up a group of 6 of them because I'd never seen them before. So I thought I'd go grab those as soon as I saw them at one of the local LFS that we've got here. I grabbed everything they had. I'd never seen Sumos, so I grabbed them. Yeah.
And then so you got like 6 Sumos in there. You still have the 2 big clown loaches. What other loaches do you have in there? It doesn't have to be exact order, but other than the Sumos and the clown loaches, what's another loach you have in the tank behind us?
I also found on a Craigslist ad, I believe, a guy had kubo ties, otherwise known as polka dot loaches, and he had a bunch, and I picked up 6 from him out of his garage. He had just imported those in. Quite recently, picked up zipper loaches. I got 3 of those.
With the zipper loaches, I noticed they tend to be more active. So do you know much about them? Have you seen them before? I never even heard of them.
Very little. I also know very little of zipper loaches. I'm looking them up recently. They pretty much react like all the other loaches. They're similar to the yo-yo loaches in their activity and how they like to be in groups. And they seem to be pretty active, a little bit more active than the other loaches.
From my nose, when we were filming and stuff like that, it seemed like the Sumo loaches seem to be pretty active, and those guys are pretty tiny. Those stay, fairly small. Do you know how big they max out at, or roughly? They
won't grow much more than 3-4 inches.
Okay, and then the clown loaches, we know those guys can take forever, but they get huge. And the rest of the loaches, I'm assuming they kind of fall in between the Sumo loach. Although wait, no, there's a loach you have that's smaller than the Sumo loach, right? The 8-stripe loach.
Yeah, 8-banded loach.
8-banded loach.
That's a recent acquisition also. I got 3 of those, I think, 2 or 3 of them, and they come out very rarely. They're so small. They're the smallest loaches I have in my tank, so they might be a little overwhelmed by their tank mates, but they're cool when they come out, and we actually got them to come out today. So
yeah. So you got the tiny ones, the 8-banded loaches. The Sumo loaches are kind of small, and then I guess like these mid-range loaches, the Kuba tie. We briefly mentioned the yo-yo loach. People may see the yo-yo loach because that's fairly common, right? I mean,
yeah.
You see that in the stores.
You'll see them.
So, and you were telling me earlier about how that gets its name and it kind of grows out of that pattern. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Okay. So the yo-yo loach gets its name because it looks like a Y-O, not to be confused with YOLO, but it's just like a Y-O print. on the yo-yo when they're small, but they will grow out of it, and then they get a random, almost like a maze pattern where it doesn't make any sense as they get bigger. I have one that's the biggest one in there is about 6 or 7 inches, and he has that random type pattern. He looks way different than the other smaller one, which still has the yo kind of look to him.
Okay, all right. Now, talk to me a little bit about feeding. I know that, I'm sure that some of these loaches have some different needs, but loaches in general, are you feeding them flake foods, pellet foods, a mix?
Well, I don't want them to be upset with me, but I just remembered I have zebra loaches also. Okay. We forgot about those. They'll be very upset with me if I don't mention them in the video. So feeding, they're not picky eaters. They will eat anything you throw at them. I feed them a mixed variety. I'll feed them bloodworms. I'll feed them Daphnia, freeze-dried Daphnia. Feed them flake foods of different kinds, spirulina. They pretty much do everything. Yeah.
Is there a favorite loach you have right now? And then is there one that you're kind of looking to get in the future that you haven't been able to get your hands on yet?
Well, my favorite loach is always the one that's recently been acquired, because I probably acquired it because I've never seen one before, at least for sale in the store. So that one's always my quick favorite. But my love, of course, will always be the first 2 loaches that I acquired, which caused this craziness of loach loving in the first place. So those guys, I'd be very upset if I lost those. Loaches are hard to find in stores, especially different varieties, some that don't make it to the U.S. for some reason, or in the fish stores. I really don't know how that works. So whenever I do see one I've never had before, I will try to make room for them. I may never see them again, and that seems to be the pattern when it comes to loaches. So.
Would you be, as people out there that have loaches, maybe getting into loaches, like I said, I know we're talking about different species here, but just generally speaking, in terms of loaches, is there things that people should keep an eye out for? Maybe some tank mates that do well, don't do well, certain setups, or just things that you found in your experience keeping them that you kind of want to share your experience with people out there.
Sure. You have, in my opinion, there's 2 different kinds of loaches. The ones that like the colder, faster moving waters, and then you have the ones that aren't as dependent on the faster flowing cold waters. So probably the best thing would be to separate the 2 types and keep the fast flowing colder loving loaches, keep them in a separate tank so you can set that up to their liking, and then have the warmer water loaches that don't depend so much on the faster moving water. Keep those together. Seems to work for me. It's what I'm doing. I don't have hill stream loaches, which is one of those that I'm speaking about, which tended like the colder water with the faster moving streams, because their habitat of clinging on the rocks, they seem to be used to that. I don't have any of those, so I haven't had to accommodate them yet.
Are there any resources or channels or things that you've been able to find that's kind of like the home for loaches, where you can kind of like go and get a ton of loach knowledge out there that you've been able to locate and use?
Yeah, there's one specific one that's on the internet. Is I think loaches.com. They give you all of the scientific names, but they tend to give you a general broad care sheet, let's say, for pretty much all of them. They all pretty much like copy and paste the same thing. At least that's what I've seen. But there's no first-hand knowledge that I can find from fellow collectors. So if anybody out there has more loaches than I do, or different kinds of loaches than I do, I got probably 7 or 8 different kinds right now. I'd love to hear from you. I'm always interested in learning. And also, if there's something you can learn from me, I'd be happy to teach you.
We could sit here and we could probably name off a few people in the hobby that are famous for live bearers or rainbow fish. Greg Sage and Gary Lane come to mind. Sure. But for whatever reason, I can't think of someone off the top of my head that's like the loach guy. And there's probably a loach guy out there. Actually, I think there's someone on YouTube called the loach guy.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, there is.
But in terms of, and that maybe the loach guy is the guy, I don't know. But in terms of somebody who has maybe a fish room full of loaches, that'd be interesting to kind of see. And
me too. I've been looking online and trying to find somebody who has a loach room per se, with a tour of some kind, and of course we can find them for cichlids and everything else, but I haven't found that. So hopefully by throwing this out here, we'll get somebody's attention and find somebody.
So what else have you been keeping with them, and have you had success? Have you had issues with some fish? Had to move them, or what's been your experience?
The loaches seem to get along with everybody fine. I have Well, I have angelfish. I have some kissing gouramis of all different sizes. I have a blue electric lobster, a freshwater lobster. Pretty much everything I throw in there, they get along just fine. Just only during feeding, the big clown loach uses his barbels, and he'll tend to poke his fellow tank mates a little bit. You know, he's just that voracious with his appetite, I guess. But other than that, they get along with everything. They make good community tank fish, I think. Just they have their special needs. They need places to hide, and then they feel a lot more comfortable, and they'll come out more often.
Okay, that's what we were talking about in terms of, especially the clown loaches, but just the loaches in general. A lot of them tend to be more of a shy fish. I think, like in my experience here, just being here, the Sumo loaches and the what are the other ones that were out?
The 8-banded.
The 8-banded came out, but what was that were dancing around a lot? The newer ones.
The zipper loach.
Zipper loaches, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, in my experience, the Sumo loaches and the zipper loaches have kind of been out more, but in general, loaches like their hiding spots.
Yeah.
And I know some of the times you notice the more activity is kind of just at night. You're just kind of relaxing, and you look over, and all of a sudden they'll just be out playing in the stream in the current.
Yeah, they all tend to like that stream. That's why I purposely try to put one in there. What is a power head?
Yeah.
And it doubles as another form of filtration by just sticking a sponge under there. So that works for them. They'll have fun playing in that stream. Most loaches do like it, and some could really do without it. So they have that option, at least in this tank, where I set it up high enough where if they really want to get away from it, they can go somewhere where they're not in the stream directly.
It's always curious to hear people talk about kind of what fish species they're into, and obviously that can change over your lifetime in a hobby. But for me right now, it's going to get into the native fish. For you, it's been these loaches, so it's really nice to sit down and talk to you. And I really appreciate you showing me all your different loaches. I didn't realize that you had 7 or 8.
I think I may have forgotten a few,
Yeah.
but somebody's gonna.
For a full tour of all of Rob's tanks and fish, you can click right there. For more wild fish tank antics, check out that video. As always, big thanks to Rob. Appreciate you guys watching. Stay positive and stay passionate.